usually not an overly weak play. Probably not a range that king high is ahead of. There are a lot of draws, but it's kind of a weird board for a draw to lead the turn on. I mean, maybe it really wouldn't be that bad actually if you had like a gut shot or something, because I think it is going to level me a decent amount. On the right, he's c-bet 2 out of 2 so far. I think it's the kind of board where people probably still c-bet pretty wide, even though it's a little bit wet. It's just a board that doesn't really hit my out of position calling range all that much. Especially at deeper effective stacks. I actually think it's fine to check raise this board in a super turbo, but I think at deeper stacks, people tend to have an even wider c-bet range. For me, pretty standard versus a thinking player check raise here. I expect the top of his range, 7x plus, good draws, all that, to play fast. So I expect his flatting range to be pretty weak, relatively weak, capped at basically combo draws. But I see that turn card is pretty bad. I don't really think there's too much in his range that calls a flop that's folding the turn. So I just shut down. And I definitely look like I check raise bluff the flop, of course, since I just check fold to like a really small turn bet there. I consider leading this river just because leading this river is slight over bet because I think I rep 8x better than he does. It just doesn't really make a ton of sense for him to have a whole lot of 8x here, or backdoor clubs, although maybe I don't either. But I just felt like it was a situation where I was more capable of having decent hands than him. But, I don't know how station he's going to be. I don't really know his range. And I felt like I needed to bet a decent size there to fold out a decent amount. It's kind of like a board where I don't expect a lot of thinking players to be checking down total air, just because it's a great c-bet opportunity, especially when I've seen him c-bet 3 out of 4 so far. 5-3 suited, another hand, pretty decent to 3-bet, and he hasn't seen 2 out of line so far. Just c-bet on the right here and shut down. I think pretty standard. I mean, it's a board that I might barrel if I find that his flatting range is pretty weak, but in the future, but I'm not doing that yet. A little bit smaller c-bet size, just because I think that like anything that continues to a bigger size is going to continue to a smaller size. It's just a board where like a range play is extremely fit or fold. I don't expect him to ever fold a pair or a jack, and I expect him to fold undercards like all the time. 7-5 suited, another good 3-bet bluffing hand, and a stack depth where I don't think that people expect to get 3-bet bluffed all that much. Mainly because they themselves don't consider 3-bet bluffing in that 30 to 35 big blind stack depth much at all. I love hitting a hand on ace-xx boards out of position versus regs, because they just even though I do have a decent amount of ace-x in my out of position range, especially in a turbo, they just refuse to accept the fact that you have ace-x in your range. And they tend to stack off really light, even though it's a board texture where I'm not going to be running a whole lot of bluffs without pretty good reads. But I think check raising and barreling off here is obviously ridiculously standard. He had ace-3 and obviously a cooler. I think if he knew enough about me, actually, I'm being exploitive enough in that spot that he could fold that, but he doesn't know that. And I can't fault him for that. And I think he's played fine so far, actually. I don't think we've had a whole lot of overly interesting spots, but, he's raising a lot of buttons. He's c-betting a lot. Maybe if he maintains that frequency of 80% plus or so, that's going to be too wide versus me. I would definitely take advantage of that. He's not playing enough hands out of position so far, but it's a really small sample. So now we got the Conga Eel Room. It's a $120 game on lock. I don't know anything about this guy. But yeah, it's a hyper. And on lock, they start at 30 big blind stacks. So head explode for you hyper turbo guys on PokerStars. Raising my button pretty wide. Basically, I'd kind of adjusted at this point to raising about 95% versus hold please on the right. because he'd been playing a little bit tighter out of position so far, and I just felt like he really wasn't seeming aggressive at all. So, yeah, and let me go back. I kind of missed what happened here on the first hand in this hyper. Okay, so he not all in 3-bet me. Yeah, he not all in 3-bet, and I'm not putting a whole lot of really thought process into like what happened there. It's I mean, of course, like I'm paying attention to it, and if it continues, I'll start to adjust. But I'm not adjusting my strategy any from there. I folded a gut shot there, but I don't think it's a hand I can continue with really. Versus the typical check raising range. Like if basically like that's not a hand that I'm really going to be c-bet calling a whole lot. Like if I think that his range is approaching wide enough where I should probably c-bet call a check raise, then that's the kind of hand that I'm going to have in my check back range on the flop, and I wouldn't c-bet. Like along with some weaker second pairs, third pairs, ace high, king high, etc. Some really good backdoor hands. And then polarizing my c-bet range so I can continue versus a check raise more often with a stronger range. Facing a limp, 24.5 deep, I think pretty standard overbet shove until you find that you're getting trapped a lot. Pretty funny though. Actually, and just on the right, I think facing a check min raise of this board, like considering I haven't seen it be out of line yet, like I do not think it's a bluff. I mean, typically, like I'm just kind of using a population tendency again, but it's not a hand I can continue with very well. It's not a stack depth I continue well at. If we were deeper, I would flat getting good odds and stuff, but like the stack depth is pretty bad here. So I just fold. I just think it's a stack depth that people really don't make plays like this at. And he limp calls ace-5 suited, which is pretty funny. Don't see that very often. And this is the spot where I feel like it's best. Like after you see someone limp call like 25 big blinds with ace-5 suited, I definitely don't think min raise folding is going to be best with 9-6 off. I feel like people just spite 3-bet shove way too much, especially being down like 4-1 stack ratio. And I think limping is close. It's just I just feel like you get jammed on a lot. And I was kind of thinking that he was probably the type to be a little bit out of line, seeing him limp call like that. That I felt like that type of player probably spazzes over a limp or a min raise, following that hand out of frustration or whatever. So that's why I folded there. I could see an argument for maybe limping, but I don't know. I'd like to hear you guys' thoughts on that, because it basically comes down to like a population tendency question. But I think a pretty good board to lead here. It's like two hands since the limp call hand, so I feel like pretty great board to lead, and we'll see if he's out of line, basically. I was kind of torn on this turn of whether I should check call, check shove, or fold. And I mean, it just comes down to hand combinations and like what I think his range can be and all that kind of stuff. I mean, you would expect that if he has hearts, he would be raising the flop, like you would think. Maybe he has 3-4, 2x, definitely I can see flatting the flop sometimes. Like 6x, you would think he would raise, right? But so I actually think because I can basically eliminate heart combinations. Like, I mean, maybe you can have it, but like I think in terms of like coming up with the average player's range in this spot, the average fish's range, you can eliminate heart combinations, and you can actually eliminate 6x, because I expect 6x to play fast a ton of the time here too. And I think it's a board where maybe you do get floated by a lot of players quite a bit. That I think I took the worst option here and check call, because that allows him to realize equity. And I really don't know anything about his river frequency, that I actually think I didn't think about in game like how much I can eliminate flushes and 6x, and now that I'm able to do that, and floats make so much sense, I think check shoving is just like so clearly the best option here, and then folding being the second best option, probably. So yeah, I don't know, kind of fucked this hand up a bit, I guess, but definitely think check shoving is the best. It's a weird hand though, kind of. Yeah, I think 6-8 off. Pretty good hand to limp. I mean, it's not, it's like probably like the bottom of my limping offsuit range, I would say, like as a standard, I guess. Yeah, so 10-7 here, definitely a standard turn lead. It seems that maybe his cutback is c-betting, or maybe his c-bet frequency just it wasn't as high as I thought it was, since I check raised and it was pretty obvious I check raised bluffed on the 7-4-3 earlier, but it could just be that his frequency wasn't as high as it seemed. But after I lead the turn here, I don't really think I'm going to get a river fold. I just think that the vast majority of hands that check back the flop are going to call the river, mainly because he's a thinking player and there's plenty of missed draws, just total error and missed straight draws and missed flush draws that I can have there. Definitely don't need to see bet big at all this stack depth, like, under betting. Merce talks about it a lot. Basically, yeah, I'm giving you good pot odds, but the effective stacks are ridiculously short, and it's a board where you can't have a lot of hands. So what are you going to do about it? Like, are you really going to check raise? Are you really going to, check shove or float or something like that? It's going to be pretty hard for you to do. So it's a good thing to have in your arsenal. And it allows you to c-bet that board with greater frequency because it needs to work less often. Could open shove and could have open shoved the king 3 off, but having seen him be, more the type to call out of position, and not that applies from like deeper stack depths to this stack depth, but I think the average turbo player, as opposed to the hyper turbo player, doesn't 3-bet shove nearly enough. That I really like taking some of the hands that towards the bottom of Nash and being more willing to min raise fold. If you can shove a hand at like 12.2 and you're 11 deep, I think it's probably better to just min raise fold. I think it's gonna have better expectation versus the type of player that I'm talking about who doesn't 3-bet shove quite enough. But that's it for this video. It definitely went longer than my weekly feature videos will in the future. They're probably going to be maybe 15 minutes or so. And then you can find like this type of video, the ones that run like, 30, 40 minutes plus on headsupsingo.com, of course. And yeah, that's it. And please feel free to post some comments. And also you can look for me posting some sample clips on YouTube of some videos as well for you guys who are not headsupsingo.com members, but you should be. So that's it. Thanks a lot, guys.